living challenges that lots of folks can relate to. So, what's your story around talking about housing and rental?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Claire.
I've seen Lisa Roberts.
So yeah, I've lived in Halifax for about 4 years now.
Right.
I'm originally from the South Shore.
Okay.
Lived in Ottawa for a while and thought maybe that's where I was going to spend some time. But then around the pandemic, I decided to come back here. And when I came back, I was really looking to maybe buy a house, maybe get some of those things on the go. But I realized very quickly that it wasn't going to be a reality immediately for me, and so I've been renting for a while now. I also work as a registered Canadian immigration consultant, so many of my clients are newcomers, and I'm always fielding their anxieties as well about the housing situation here, and they absolutely deserve to have affordable housing too, and the future that they've been promised in Canada, they want to see that come to fruition. So because I'll be renting and a lot of my clients are renting for the foreseeable future, we really need a rent control here, and we really need to avoid corporate landlords buying up housing.
Yes,
so I'm really looking forward to your ideas around that.
Oh, thank you. Well, that's exactly what we want to do, find ways to protect renters, and all of the affordable stuff is actually being bought up by big corporations, and that's making it even harder and harder. Yeah, I'm with you. Do you have a story around rental as well?
Yeah. I'm Sydney. I use they, she pronouns. I actually owned a house with my ex for about 4 years.
Okay.
And when we broke up in December, I was looking to rent again, and I could not wrap my head around the prices of rentals. I live in the South Shore in like a more rural community, so it's a lot of Airbnbs that become short-term rentals in winter. And a lot of the housing there is super unaffordable on a single income budget. Like coming from owning a house, I just can't understand where it's coming from. And so I guess my concern is like rural housing and how I understand if you're a landlord and that's your job, you need to make an income and make a profit, but people also need to live.
Totally, yeah.
So,
there's got to be a way that people can do this without ripping people off.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. We're going to keep it moving and chat with some more folks. Okay, thanks so much. Thanks for sharing. I really appreciate that. And it helps because I'm sure other people hearing this really gets my story too. So you're giving them a voice too. Thanks. Hey, how y'all doing? Thanks so much for being here, by the way. Hey, we're talking about affordable homes or the lack thereof. You want to share your story? I feel like you're ready to go.
Oh yeah, I'll go first.
Okay, go for it.
So I'm actually in a more positive situation. I am lower income and I rent a one-bedroom by myself that's very affordable. And I did come into the situation purely by luck. However, if my rental was the current market price, there is no way I would be able to afford it on my own. And I have kind landlords, which I'm very fortunate to have. However, due to this uncertain nature of rentals, I'm still quite anxious about the unknown. If my landlord were to ever sell or something were to happen and I would be rent evicted, and I would have to then, I would have to change my lifestyle completely, as there's no way that I would be able to find another one bedroom for what I'm currently paying. So this looming threat causes myself and a lot of renters anxiety about the fact that our housing could be taken away at any minute. And we would have to change our lifestyle. And that's purely due to the lack of regulations around rentals in Nova Scotia and rent eviction and basically throwing people out with no choice. And I think that really needs to change. I'm excited to see what your thoughts on that are.
I think you'll be happy here because we're going to really focus in on some solutions to that, because that constant fear and anxiety is no way for people to live.
Absolutely.
You have to have that sense of security in your own home. So
and
we're trying to give people we're trying to give people that today. Okay, thanks for sharing that.
Thank you.
Do y'all have stories as well you want to share?
So my name's Cole. I recently started my master's here in Halifax.
Congratulations.
Thank you. When I got in, of course, step 2 is then finding somewhere to live.
Right.
Fortunately, I did have a little bit of time for that, and I did have a friend who also had the same program. So we spent about 6 months like looking at probably 12, 15 plus like listings. Like we were sending them back and forth on like every day, trying to find something that like meet our needs, but also met our budget more importantly.
Right.
And in the end, we were very fortunate, but it was a long process trying to find somewhere that
There's just not very many options.
Exactly. Yeah. Somewhere that was going to be comfortable, feasible. You know, we have to walk everywhere.
Right.
That stuff. Well, meanwhile, as we're students for the next 2 years, we don't have any opportunity to make income. Because it's a full-time program, so we have to keep that in mind too.
Keep that in mind, yeah. And are you somewhere where you feel like you're going to be okay, or does it feel like the rent might go up or you might lose it?
It's definitely a concern on the mind, especially with talking with classmates. They're all scared they're going to have to pack up and move in the middle of a busy semester. Put them in morning too.
Right. Okay. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Do you have
I do. My name is Laura, and I've lived in Halifax for about 6 years, and I've moved pretty much every year.
Really?
Because, you know, you're just trying to find better landlords, better situations. I've lived in places where they refuse to change the laundry machines when they're completely broken.
Wow.
I've lived in places infested with mold, with landlords who are just not kind. And it's terrible that we have to be at the whim of people, you know? I think more regulation on what people can do, these rent caps, will definitely just help support renters.
Right.
And I think also a big trend that I've seen is in Halifax we see a lot of these luxury condos coming up, and people think, oh, more housing means more accessible, but it's not. It's if they're unaffordable, we can't get to it. There's not enough affordable housing, and they'll sometimes put like a few places to the side that's going to be affordable, but the lineups for that are endless. You know, we need to build the infrastructure, and we also do have the infrastructure. It's not about scarcity. I've had friends who work for these companies who sometimes their jobs on the weekends are going and flushing the toilets and running the sinks because they just sit empty for months.
Wow.
So we have the ability to make the change. We have the infrastructure. It just needs to be affordable, it needs to be regulated.
If I can just get you on that point again, because I totally agree with you. Like if you, in your community where you're living, if a tower went up and there was a whole bunch of luxury condos, how would that help you?
It wouldn't. I wouldn't be able to afford it. Like, it would make no difference in my life.
Yeah, I always say, like, what's the point of building stuff if you can't afford them?
Yeah.
Like, it's not really helping fix the problem.
Yeah.
Okay. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks so much for
Yeah,
being here.
thank you so much. Thanks for sharing your stories.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Hey, how y'all doing?
How are you?
Thanks for pulling the chair for me. What's your name?
Angus.
Angus? Lewis, nice to meet you both. Tell me your story.
Yeah. So I'm from Antigonish, and I started renting in university. When I first moved in, I was paying like $500 a month, which was nice, but I also didn't have much opportunity to make income, and I was going into debt because I was taking student loans to pay my rent and my tuition.
Of course.
And I noticed right off the bat that there were people who were being priced out of homes because students were able to go into debt to pay rent, and a family can't take a loan to pay rent. As the years went on, my rent was jumping by 8, 10, 15% each year, and my wages were not following that in the summer. And so I kept having to take bigger loans to pay for rent and tuition. Now I moved to the city, and I'm working full time, and my rent is still like over a third of my net income.
Right.
And I'm wanting to save for my future. I'm wanting to invest in my community and invest in myself. I want to go to a master's eventually, but I find it hard to save for that when my rent is going up faster than my wages, and I feel like I have to sacrifice my future plans for addressing my current financial concerns.
Right. Wow. That's a really good way to put it. And it's really bad that that's what's going on, but I think you're capturing a lot of people are going through this idea of like, you can't actually plan for the future because you're so struggling with the current right now. Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that.
Absolutely.
And then do you have a story around rent as well?
Yeah. I've lived in Halifax for about 6.5 years, and I've lived in like bigger, more corporate owned like apartments, as well as smaller owned landlord apartments. And consistently, it's always been the lower you pay, the more that you give up in terms of like being able to live in a healthy environment.
Right.
In terms of pests, mold, proper ventilation, like having the essentials of what you need kind of covered in your housing. I also work as a food bank manager, so I like do see the like high cost of food every day, and then talking also with all of my clients, everyone's big concern always lies within their housing and whether or not they're going to leave. Like that's what they pay first before they consider paying for their food, which is like their most basic necessity. So I like can see that in terms of how many people are visiting our food bank every single week. And yeah, it really has impacted the community as well. I see a lot of like mutual aid posts go up a lot more frequently, which is, I think, awesome that we're able to kind of come together and support our community, but I don't think that it's something that should be necessary that we have to do.
And you're seeing that connection between like food security, like being able to afford food and being able to afford a home. Like that's so connected. Like those are your two basic necessities, right?
Absolutely.
Well, thanks for sharing that, and thanks for the work you do at the food bank.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Nice going through.
Thanks for Lisa for going to the back. Hi, all. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah. Really keen to share your story. Lovely hair and beard. I feel like I'm looking at myself. That's okay. Nice to meet you. What's your name?
Christian.
Say again?
Christian.
Christian. Nice to meet you. And?
Katie.
Katie. Nice to meet you. Katie.
Avery.
Avery. Pleasure. Do you all have some stories you wanted to share?
Yes, I'll be going first.
Okay.
So my name is Katie. I'm an occupational therapist here in Halifax.
Thanks for that.
In my job, I see a lot of people that are off work, whether that be for physical injuries, mental health concerns. And what I'm seeing time and time again is people going back prematurely before they're fully recovered or healed. Because if not, they're at risk of maybe losing their home or they can't make their rent. And it's really unfortunate that these medically vulnerable people are having to choose between their health and their home.
Right. Oh wow, what a good picture of a really bad problem. It captures what's going on, right? Because things are so expensive, you can't afford to say, well, I need another couple weeks to heal, but a couple more weeks of pay, not having pay, I'm not going to be able to.
Then they're at risk of losing everything they've worked for.
Well, thanks for sharing that. I appreciate that.
And I'll go next. So my concerns are, I feel like I've been renting in Halifax since 2018, and I feel like specifically since 2020, there's been such a public outcry for more affordable housing. And similarly what Laura said is we keep seeing all these luxury apartments and condos go up. So realistically, it's not helping the people that are fighting for their affordable housing. Like I know currently I'm a cafe manager, and the place that we live in together, like it takes up more than half my income. And so, you know, when you're a kid, you dream of like owning a home with land, and that's not even in my mind anymore, because I just don't see how we can do that when our options are like these super expensive buildings.
Yeah, it just doesn't seem like it's even in the books for you right now.
Yeah, definitely.
I really want to keep that dream alive for you though, so that's like a part of what we're fighting for, so that people can actually, you should be able to afford a home, you should be able to afford to rent a home, if you want to buy one, there should be options for you to be able to afford to buy one as well, so you're who I'm fighting for, so thanks for sharing. Do you want to share your story as well?
Oh yeah, sure. My name is Christian. I'm originally from the South Shore. So I remember my apartment back home was like very, very, very affordable. And that was only a few years ago, and then I'm currently looking for an apartment now, and it's just ridiculous, the prices that we're looking at. And I think a lot of people echoed some really good points about the infrastructure is there. Like there are apartments that are just sitting empty because of the price, and they can just afford to have them sitting empty like that. And yeah, I think we definitely need something to be done about that.
Totally. Thank you for sharing the story. I'm getting a note that I got to keep on. I'm getting a tap on the back. Thank you for sharing that, Christian. Thank you for sharing your story.
Last table, Jagmeet.
Okay.
Here we are.
Thank you so much for doing this. Hi, Jagmeet.
Taryn.
Taryn?
Nice to meet you.
Annie, nice to meet you both.
So I'm gonna go
I'm
first.
supposed to bring this along with me.
In 2 weeks, I will be finished my 3rd year at Dalhousie University.
Congrats.
Thank you. And I have seen myself and so many of my peers be just our financial futures are being destroyed for the sin of being young and wanting an education. I moved out of my dad's basement last May.
Okay.
I'm a performing arts student. That's a lot of hours.
Yeah.
And so I moved into an apartment closer to Dow.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked 2 jobs during the summer. I've worked very hard to keep myself out of debt until the business I worked for shut down, and then I started going through some health struggles.
I'm sorry.
I'm gonna be out of money by the end of the summer.
Oh boy.
And that's not a rare experience. So many of my peers, the financially independent student, the student that doesn't have a parent sending them money every month, they're in a hole and they don't know how to get out.
Right.
And older generations will look at us and they will say that Gen Z is lazy or they don't have work ethic. When in reality, if you look at the numbers, a 1-bedroom apartment in the city cost $450 in 1990, whereas today it costs more like $1,400.
Yeah, yeah, that's really the problem for sure.
And it is
even
terrifying.
tuition. Like when I went to law school,
God.
it's like it was $8K a year,
Absolutely.
and now that same school is like $30K a year. Like the salaries do not go up by that much.
I'm lucky enough to have worked hard to keep my scholarships, but some people aren't so lucky, and some people are just in so much debt that is going to follow them their entire lives, and it feels like such a hopeless situation, especially today with political awareness. Everything feels so hopeless, so it's really hard to try to keep going.
Yeah. Oh boy. Well, I hope today will give you some hope. 'Cause
Oh,
like,
yes.
that's what I want. I want to give people the sense that like things can get better. Like, we're not stuck in this where we are at. We're not stuck here. It's because of choices that got us here. We can make better choices to get out of here.
Absolutely.
So, well, thank you for sharing your story and for capturing kind of that feeling of hopelessness.
Yes.
And honestly, it is, and for all the folks who might have said it to you, it is not your fault. The costs today are in a totally different stratosphere than they were. Even when I'm not that old, I don't think. But when I went to university, even then, I think about like how much like groceries were, and how much tuition costs, and like it's night and day. Like it's so much harder now. So it's our job now to make it easier for you. So thank you for sharing your story. Did you want to share yours?
Sure. So my name's Taryn. I'm a political science and a sustainability student at Dalhousie University. I'm also a renter here in Halifax. My story is less about myself, more about a systemic issue. I think close to the heart of many Haligonians is the growing homeless population, and I think that is really an issue of not having enough affordable housing.
Yeah.
Having gone out campaigning with various NDP candidates, I have seen that a lot of people, particularly homeless people, find this as a really large issue. The reason that they had become homeless is perchance they lost their jobs. And yeah, some do have health issues, so they're paying for Medicare. And then on top of that, they can't afford their rent. So I think the thing is people don't have enough empathy for these people, because it's not a choice that they ended up out there on the streets. It's a systemic problem of not having affordable housing.
That's a good way to put it.
And I think that, personally, I'd like to see a change. And I'm really hoping that, and I know that the NDP will make that change.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I appreciate that.
We'll just wait for people to set up.
Okay. We're gonna get to the point of showing you. Give me that. So. Thank you for sharing. It's Tara.
Thank you.
That's good. In the situation of the not here.
I have heard that.
Oh yeah. I thought it means kind of mind like or like health.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
lovely.
Yeah, Tara. So I'm like, oh, that sounds very, very close. Take that tea and salt. It's the same thing.
I love that.
That's good.
Amazing.
Well, very nice to meet you.
I just have 2 masters and a lot of student loans.
Lost their home is because there wasn't like and the rent went higher than their salaries could afford and things like that. Thanks for sharing. Very nice to meet you both.
Jagmeet, so stay where you are.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk here,
Yeah.
and then I'm going to go there.
Stay seated? You want standing or seated? Seated.
For now.
Okay.
For now.
Simple way to ensure lovely hot water.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you to everyone who shared their stories. I'm Lisa Roberts. I'm the NDP candidate in Halifax. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we're gathered here together in Chibuktuk in Halifax, which is part of the unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Mi'kmaq, and that the struggle for home and for housing security is very tied to our colonial history and the connection to land, and that the fight for affordable housing has to include respect for Indigenous people and Indigenous rights. We're here because too many people in Canada and too many people in Halifax specifically are being pushed out of their homes. They're being pushed out by skyrocketing rents and renovictions and the quest for corporate profits. And even when they are housed, they're not feeling secure. They're not feeling safe about what is coming next. Families are working hard, doing everything right, and still being priced out of the communities that they love and ought to be loving and living and growing in. And that's not the kind of country that we want. New Democrats have always fought to make sure people have a safe, affordable place to live. And now we're ready to go even further. And so it's my honor to introduce someone who has been leading that fight every single day, standing up for renters, standing up for families, and standing up for what really matters. Jagmeet Singh, leader of the NDP.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. And as Lisa said, thank you so much for sharing your stories for the folks that were here. They shared some really heartbreaking, touching, and moving stories. So thank you for doing that. And I got to say a big thank you to Lisa Roberts for the introduction, but also for her incredible work and for being our candidate. Really proud of you, not just as our candidate, but as our next MP for Halifax. And the stories that we heard today are a lot of stories of despair, of worry, of anxiety, the fact that people can't find places that are affordable. If you're living somewhere that feels like I can kind of get by, you're living in constant fear that you're going to lose that place and there's nowhere else to go. So there's all these worries, all these fears, and what makes it even worse is we've got the chaos coming from Donald Trump and the uncertainty that that presents. That what does that mean for my life? What does that mean for my job? How is the trade war going to impact my potential ability to get a job? And what's that going to mean for the cost of living that's already so high? And since I pay so much for my rent, I got so little left over, I'm not going to be able to handle if prices get even higher. There's not much left over. People are talking about how much their rent is costing them, how it takes up sometimes more than half of their income that they're bringing in. And that is wrong. People should be able to have a good place, a decent place that allows them with enough money left over for them to save up, for them to pay the bills, for them to build for the future. And people are like, I can't even think about the future. I'm so caught up in the struggles of right now. And that's something I want to change. And we've heard recently Mark Carney talk about it's going to be difficult times ahead. But in Mark Carney's viewpoint, when he talks about difficult times ahead, who is he talking about? Because I know he's not talking about difficult times for those at the top. He's not talking about difficult times for corporate landlords. He's talking about difficult times for you. He's saying that people, everyday folks, got to tighten their belts, but that those at the top don't have to do anything. I think that is a wrong approach. In this time, the role of government should be to say no. You know, when this storm is hitting us, the storm that Donald Trump represents, these difficult times, government should step up and say, you know what, it's not going to be on the backs of everyday folks. It's not going to be the backs of these young people. We're not going to let that happen. And so I think that it's clear that he's not going to be the person that's going to stop big landlords that are exploiting you. He's not going to be the one that's going to stop renovictions or fixed-term leases. He actually benefited from the housing crisis just as recently as a couple months ago when he was literally the chair of one of the largest corporate landlords that engaged in renoviction. He's not going to be the person that's going to stop something that he profited off of. And he's already said his plan. Plan is to cut the services that you need to pay for tax cuts for the millionaires. I think that's wrong. And Pierre Poilievre is certainly not going to be the one to stop corporations from ripping you off. He is also going to let them do whatever they want. So right now people need some hope. I heard a lot of people talking about losing hope. And I want to give you some hope. Our plan is national rent control. We want to make sure that people actually have protections, that renters are protected. Our plan is to end fixed-term leases. We want to end renovictions and demevictions. We want to strengthen tenant unions to be able to negotiate for their tenants with the landlords. We want to end the collusion that's going on where large corporate landlords are colluding to jack up rent. You'll notice that rents go up across the boards. It's because there's collusion going on. They're jacking up the rents together. And the way we're going to do this is, if any province or municipality wants federal investments, federal funds to build homes, they have to put in place laws that protect renters. We're not going to build affordable homes for those homes to just turn into unaffordable homes because there's no protections in place. If we build a home and there's no rent control and there's affordability there, well, that affordability will evaporate because there's no rent control. If we build a home that's affordable and there's fixed-term leases, and after a year, the tenant, the landlord can just jack up the rent, well, then we've not actually solved the problem. So if you want to get federal funding with New Democrats there, we're going to require that federal funding is tied to laws being passed in municipalities and provinces that protect renters, that end fixed-term leases, that end renovictions and demevictions, and that put in place rent control. That's our plan for people. That's our plan to put people first. So in this time, people are feeling really worried. If you're worried about the cuts that feel like they're looming, if you're worried about you being forgotten, vote for a New Democrat. Vote for Lisa Roberts here in Halifax, and you're going to send someone to Ottawa that's going to put you first, not the billionaires, not the corporate landlords, but you and your family. Donc, on sait qu'on est dans un temps difficile. C'est clair, et j'ai entendu des histoires des gens ici. Ils ont partagé les histoires, comment ils sont désespérés, comment ça semble qu'il n'y a pas des options, il n'y a pas de solutions. Les gens qui ont des appartements abordables, mais qui ont peur qu'ils vont perdre ces appartements, ces logements. Les gens qui pensent que je ne peux jamais penser de la future parce que le présent, c'est tellement difficile. Donc aujourd'hui, je veux donner d'espoir. Souvent, on entend de Mark Carney, il parle maintenant récemment, il a parlé du fait que ça va être des temps difficiles pour les gens. Mais quand il parle de temps difficiles, il souligne le fait que ça va être des temps difficiles pour les gens, pour les travailleurs, mais il jamais va dire que ça va être des temps difficiles pour les grandes entreprises. Parce que dans son opinion, il pense que toute la pression de cette crise doit tomber sur les épaules de vous, de votre famille, des jeunes personnes. Je pense qu'il a tort. Ce n'est pas la bonne chose à faire. Et Pierre Poilievre, lui aussi, ne va pas faire face aux grands problèmes comme les rénovictions, comme le fait que les loyers augmentent tout le temps. Il ne va pas faire face à ces grandes entreprises d'immobilier. Donc, Mark Carney, il a profité de la crise du logement. Il ne va pas arrêter les géants de l'immobilier à vous arnaquer. Il ne va pas faire ça. Donc, c'est quoi la solution? Donc, si vous voulez quelqu'un qui est de votre bord, qui va se battre pour vous, c'est l'NPD. C'est Lisa Roberts ici à Halifax, c'est l'NPD partout au pays. Donc, notre plan aujourd'hui, on va annoncer un contrôle des loyers national. On va mettre fin aux rénovictions. On va arrêter les arnaques des grandes entreprises. On va donner plus de pouvoir aux syndicats pour les locataires. On va dire que dans ces temps difficiles, on doit protéger les locataires. On doit arrêter les arnaques des géants de l'immobilier. Et c'est exactement ce qu'on va faire. On va lier les financements au niveau fédéral aux provinces et municipalités qui mettent en place des lois qui mettent fin à ces arnaques, qui mettent fin aux entreprises qui augmentent le loyer, qui mettent fin à ça. On va mettre fin aux entreprises qui font les rénovations. Donc, on peut faire ça. Je veux donner d'espoir. On a des solutions. Mais vous méritez quelqu'un qui est de votre bord, qui va se battre pour vous, pas pour défendre les profits des milliardaires, mais quelqu'un qui va vraiment cibler vos intérêts et protéger vos intérêts chaque jour. Et ça, c'est nous, l'NPD. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. On va maintenant passer à la période de questions des journalistes. Une question et une relance par journaliste. We'll now take the questions from the press. One question, one follow-up per journalist. We'll begin with, on va commencer avec Valérie Gamache, Radio-Canada.
Bonjour, M. Singh. Vous me permettrez de m'égarer du sujet du logement ce matin, puisque c'est le retour d'une candidate quand même vedette au Québec, Ruth-Hélène Brosseau, qui se représente dans Berthier-Masquinongé. Qu'est-ce que ça représente pour vous, ce retour de Ruth-Hélène comme candidate?
C'est des nouvelles incroyables. Ruth Allen, comme vous savez, c'était une députée vedette et une candidate vedette pour nous. Elle était mon ancienne leader en chambre. Elle a montré une conviction, une passion pour son comté, une passion pour les gens. Elle s'est battue pour améliorer la science-emploi. Elle était critique pour le secteur agriculture. Donc, c'est quelqu'un qui est vraiment incroyable comme partie de notre équipe, mais aussi un député incroyable pour Berthier-Masconoget. Donc, si vous habitez dans le comté, je vous encourage de voter pour une vedette comme elle. Elle va vraiment se battre pour vous.
Et vous affichez complet. Oh, oui.
Sure, yeah. I should have said off the top that I understand why I totally accept a question on this topic because it's very important. We're so excited that Ruth Ellen Brosseau is running again. She is absolutely a star. She was a star when she was in the House, and she's going to be a star candidate for us. She was formerly my House leader as well. She's someone that cares deeply about the people she represents. She's a fighter, and her story is one that really impressed a lot of people. Seeing someone start off with a lot of folks that were detractors. People thought that she wasn't going to be a great MP, and she turned out to be an incredible MP and fought so hard for people. And it shows you we actually need MPs who come from all walks of life. And if you give someone like that a shot, look at the great work she can do. So I encourage everybody who lives in the riding to vote for someone like Ruth Ellen Brosseau. She's going to fight for you. She is incredible, and I'm so proud that she's running for us again.
Et avec cette candidature, vous affichez complet avec 343 candidats devant et avant les libéraux et les conservateurs qui ont dû, eux, rejeter certaines candidatures. Pouvez-vous garantir que vous n'aurez pas à faire ça du côté des néo-démocrates, de rejeter certaines candidatures?
On est fiers du fait qu'on a une équipe qui travaille tellement fort pour chercher des candidats et candidates. On a maintenant tous les candidats pour cette élection. On est fiers de ça aussi, comme vous avez dit, avant des autres partis. Et en plus, on ne sait pas qu'est-ce qui va arriver, mais je peux dire que je vais toujours montrer de leadership s'il y a une situation où je dois prendre une décision. Yeah, for sure. Yes, I've got an incredible team, and folks should always know that anytime I get up here with, imagine, like hundreds of people behind me because it's a whole team that does the work that we do. So I'm really proud of our team. We are, yes, the first party to have a full slate of candidates. My team has worked really hard to find these great candidates. And we've, yes, done this before the Liberals or the Conservatives, so I'll take a little bit of pride in that my team is so amazing that they were able to make that happen. And whatever happens in the future, we don't know with respect to what will come up in terms of candidates. I can just guarantee you I will make the right decision for our country and for our party when it comes to any matters that arise.
Thank you. Next question, Janice McGregor, CBC.
Appreciating the concerns that have been expressed so articulately in this cafe today. But it strikes me that these are issues that perhaps belong more in a provincial or a municipal election campaign just jurisdictionally. Why are you trying to take what are ultimately kind of like provincial accountability issues and turn them into a federal ballot question?
Because the matter of the crisis that we're in is a national crisis. Like wherever you go in this country, people can't afford homes, and it's getting worse and worse. It's not getting better. Rents are going up. It seems impossible to buy a home. We heard from some young people who thought, you know, maybe I've saved up a bit, maybe I'll be able to buy a home. And like, it's not in the books for me. I don't see it ever being in the books for me. I want to change that. And I really believe this, that a leader is not someone who looks for excuses. I could look for excuses all day and say, oh, it's not my jurisdiction. It's not something I can do something about. I could look for an excuse all day long. I think a leader is not someone who looks for excuses. It's someone who looks for solutions. And yeah, there's lots of solutions. We can absolutely find ways to protect people at the federal level. And one example that I gave, and I mean it, is that if we're investing, and no one doubts that the federal government can invest in housing, we've done that before, investing in housing is important. Well, why would we invest in building homes that are affordable if then in a couple of years those homes are no longer affordable? That would be a bad investment. I think Canadians would say that would be a bad investment. So we're going to say we're going to make those investments, yes, But let's require that if we build a home that's affordable, it stays affordable. And the only way that happens is by putting in place better protections for renters. That means ending fixed-term leases. That means rent control. So if a jurisdiction, if a province or a municipality doesn't have those laws in place, then no, we're not going to spend money there. But if they want to have federal funding to build homes that we all know every community needs, then put in place laws that protect the people that are renting those homes.
This weekend, I think the full ramifications of the automotive sector tariffs are starting to kick in a lot of places. I'm just wondering, there have been a lot of takes about whether Canada's doing enough in terms of counter tariffs and countermeasures across levels of government, whether it needs to do more, whether it's doing too much, and that costs Canadians who have to purchase those imported goods. What's the NDP's take? Like, have we hit kind of Goldilocks equilibrium where it's just right, or would you want to see more retaliation, less? What?
On the retaliation front, I think there's been a broad consensus around the fact that we're being hit in a war that we did not want, we did not choose, it's illegal, it's unprovoked, and we got to fight back. Canadians are proudly putting their elbows up. They're saying we're going to defend our country, we're going to fight back, and I think that's the right thing to do. Where I differ, where I disagree with the approach is, from the other leaders, I'm not hearing a focus on people. Because in this difficult time, what does it actually mean that we've got this trade war? It means that people are now living more uncertain lives. It means that people are worried that life is going to get even harder. People are worried that they might lose their jobs. There might not be work for them, that they're already stretched so thin that costs might go up, and it means that they're going to be suffering. And so the difference that I present compared to Liberals and Conservatives, compared to Mark Carney and Pierre Poilievre, we've been talking about solutions that make life better for people in all of this uncertainty. So the idea of protecting renters is to say, well, in the face of this storm and all of this uncertainty, it would make matters even worse if you don't even have a secure home. So let's secure people's homes by giving them more protections. We've talked about employment insurance. If workers right now lose their job, the way employment insurance works is there's a cap on how much you can claim. So if you earn, the maximum is about $60,000, and you get about half of that back. Well, the way things are right now, if you have to live off of half of your income, no one could do that. People are spending their entire income on their rent, their bills, and their groceries. So how would someone get by on half of their income? That might have worked like 30 or 40 years ago when people were able to save up and costs weren't as high. But nowadays, it's not going to work. So we want to see EI improved to cover workers, their rent, their groceries, their bills. We need to see a higher EI. We're talking about building Canada. Let's build up our country. We need to build infrastructure here. Let's use Canadian material, Canadian steel, Canadian lumber, Canadian aluminum. Let's build a more resilient economy by building up Canada. So that's our offer that's different. We're really focused on how we respond to the threat of Donald Trump and the impact on workers by protecting people. And that's really what we're offering to Canadians.
Thank you. Next question, Rachel Ayello, CTV.
Good morning. Nanos's latest numbers out this morning show that the NDP have fallen to 8% support. I know you say you're getting questions in every election about the polls, but you are now at a new numeric low. Should we expect your campaign to pivot to triage mode next week?
Again, we saw in the Ontario election that just happened a couple months ago, they literally predicted, the same aggregate said that the New Democratic Party would not have party status. They literally formed the official opposition. So I'm not worried about that. What I'm focused on in this campaign is the choice that people have. People are rejecting the message of Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives, saying, you know what, the cuts that he's proposing, not good for our country, not good for my family, not good for me. That's a no for me. And now people are starting to look at Mark Carney and saying, well, he's also talking about cuts. And he's someone that's not going to protect me and my family against the exploitation I'm experiencing as a renter. He's not someone who's going to stand up for me. If you're worried about that, send a New Democrat to fight for you. Vote for Lisa Roberts here in Halifax, and you'll have someone that's going to be on your side.
But respectfully, aren't you risking the future of your party by taking this head down, steady as she goes approach and not trying to change things up?
We are focused on people, and this campaign matters. This campaign is very important. So we're going to use every day of this campaign to give people a real choice. I don't want people to think, and I'm sure Liberals and Conservatives would love for you to think, that you have no other choice in this election. They would love for you to have no one out there pointing out that Mark Carney is someone that profited off of the housing crisis. I'm sure he would love for us to not be here to say that. I'm sure that Pierre Poilievre would love for us to not point out that his plan to cut people, the services, at a time of potential recession and economic disaster is a horrible plan. But we're not going anywhere. We're never going to give up fighting for people.
Thank you. Now, David Turton, CBC.
Hi, good morning, Mr. Singh. I'm just wondering if you would respond to some controversy that's happening with the candidate for the Conservatives in North Island, Powell River, Aaron Gunn. He made posts on X between 2019 and 2021 that seemingly denied the impact of residential schools on Indigenous peoples. What's your take on those comments, and what's your take on the Conservative leader who seems to be standing by his candidate?
Those comments are heinous, they're hurtful, and they're frankly clearly wrong. Aaron Gunn has made comments that go to diminishing the impact of residential schools, which we know were direct a genocide on the Indigenous people. They were shameful, they were harmful, they were hurtful, and the Canadian government was complicit in this. And the least we can do is acknowledge the harm suffered. That's a bare minimum to say, yeah, they were horrible. We need to do a lot more to walk the path of reconciliation. We need to actually lift up Indigenous people and walk as partners and allies by ensuring there's clean drinking water, adequate housing, access to healthcare, access to education. There's lots that we need to do. But at a minimum, people should expect that we acknowledge the harm that they suffered. And what Aaron Gunn is doing is diminishing that, and that is absolutely wrong. And the fact that Pierre Poilievre is standing beside a candidate is also wrong. In fact, there's been a number of local mayors and councillors in BC, large organizations that represent Indigenous people have come out and said that this is wrong, that he should drop the candidate. So my message to Pierre Poilievre is, what you're doing is wrong, drop Aaron Gunn as a candidate. Oui, donc les propos de ce candidat Aaron Gunn sont haineux, sont honteux et il a tort. C'est comment on tort. Il essaie de réduire les impacts des écoles résidentielles et c'est clair que l'impact est horrible. C'est un génocide contre le peuple autochtone. Donc, dans notre avis, ce que Pierre Poilievre doit faire, c'est de jeter cette candidat. Mais ce n'est pas seulement mon propos. Il y a une lettre écrite par des leaders dans la communauté, des conseillères municipales, des maires et des mairesses. On a aussi des organismes qui représentent la communauté autochtone, qui aussi disent, des organismes qui disent qu'il doit jeter cette candidate. Donc, mon message pour Pierre Poilievre, faites la bonne chose et rejetez ce candidat.
And just a second question about the announcement of the day on rent control. Your backgrounder says that you will be targeting homes that are built on federally regulated land, but most people in this room who are renters obviously don't live on federally regulated land. And of course, they live on land that's controlled by the provinces, and rent control typically in most places is controlled by the provinces. So maybe help me understand how you can make a promise that the NDP is going to bring in rent control when it's more or less out of your control. Yeah.
There's a couple of things going on. We've had a number of announcements on housing. And so one of our announcements on housing was that we would use federal land, which is in every province, every municipality, there's federal land, that we would keep that land owned by the public and that we would build 100% affordable homes on that land. In contrast to the other parties who both talk about selling off that land and selling it to the highest bidder to build mostly unaffordable homes. I think that's a bad plan. Our plan is to keep that land public, own it by the people, and to build affordable homes on that land. That's separate from today's announcement, which is about whenever we make investments in communities, there's many different funds that we have, the Housing Accelerator Fund, other affordability housing investments that we make, that anytime there's an investment made in a province or a municipality, we are going to require that it be tied to laws being in place that protect the renters. So if investments are going to be made in Halifax, for example, the requirement will be, if you want federal money to build a home, you have to pass laws, municipally and federally, that actually protect renters. We want to see laws that put in place real rent control, laws that end fixed-term leases, laws that end rent eviction and dem eviction. Other municipalities have passed laws that ban rent evictions, we want to see those laws passed in a municipality if they want federal funds. Other provinces have rent control in place. Well, we want to see true rent control with fixed term leases removed if you want federal funds. So it's a condition of funding. When we spend money, we absolutely can have conditions in place. So we're saying we're going to invest in homes, but there's got to be laws in place to ensure that our investments are good investments. If we build and invest in a community, whether it's federal land or not, if we just invest in a community, we want to make sure that those investments continue to benefit people, and that to do that, we need laws that protect renters.
Thank you. Now, Mara Forrest, Canadian Press.
Yeah, thank you. We're 2 weeks into the campaign now, and I wonder if it seems unrealistic at this point that we will see an NDP government at the end of this campaign. Would you be willing to say at this point that Canadians should elect a minority Liberal or Conservative government if it's not going to be an NDP government?
Well, I can tell you from my lived experience, from what I've seen. We were in a minority government, and I can tell you that just 25 New Democrats were able to bring in dental care that has helped millions of Canadians. Literally millions of people have been able to look after their teeth because we fought to bring that in, with just 25 of us. 25 of us brought in pharmacare, and now 3 provinces are going to have free birth control and diabetes medication and devices because we fought for it. Just 25 of us. So imagine what would happen if you elected more of us, sent more of us to Ottawa. If you sent more of us to Ottawa, we could fight for you even more. If you sent me as your Prime Minister, I would be honored to serve. People would choose the outcome of this election. I'm asking people to consider, who do you want in Ottawa fighting for you? Who do you want standing up to say, you know what, no, I'm not going to let corporate landlords rip you off? Who do you want in Ottawa to say, you know what, I want us to have more affordable groceries, I'm going to put in a price cap on food essentials? Who do you want in Ottawa fighting for you and your family, for fighting for the things that you hold dear? That's a New Democrat. And so send Lisa Roberts if you live here in Halifax. Wherever you live, send a New Democrat that's going to fight for you.
And I wonder if we could hear Ms. Roberts on just how you've seen the housing situation change in Halifax in the last few years.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you. I was the MLA and the NDP provincial housing critic the first time that someone slept in a tent visibly in my constituency, and at that time I had folks calling my office, my MLA office, and saying, you have to do something. You have to intervene on this person's behalf, and they knew that person's name, so that they would be well sheltered and taken care of. And so it's been really quite dramatic over the past 8 years how prevalent, visible, persistent homelessness has become, and really how frustrating it is. Again, as a former MLA, as a former housing critic for the Nova Scotia NDP caucus, there's no satisfaction in saying, we told you so. But literally in Province House in Nova Scotia, I told them so. Like, I asked questions to the Premier as we were seeing older, deeply, relatively affordable buildings being bought up and the entire buildings being renovicted and repositioned at much higher rents. So yeah, I'm super motivated to win this seat in Halifax because there is so much work that we need to do. There are solutions that we can, there are solutions from around the world that we can learn from and adopt, and people really need someone fighting for them to have the security of home so that they can commit to their communities and commit to their lives.
Thank you. Last question, Angela Copabianca, Global News.
Hi. So leading into this election, the NDP didn't have any seats in Atlantic Canada. I guess I'm wondering, how confident are you that the NDP will win any seats in the region?
Very confident. I've spoken to lots of folks that remember what it was like to have a New Democrat fighting for them. They remember what it was like having Megan Leslie here in Halifax. And they feel the loss of not having someone that's actually standing up for them, someone that's not actually fighting for them, someone that's bringing kind of the message from Ottawa here instead of taking Halifax's message to Ottawa. And so that's what you're going to get with a New Democrat. If you elect Lisa Roberts, you're going to get a voice that's going to say, you know what, Halifax deserves better. that we need better protections for renters. We need better protections for people. That in all of this struggle, who's going to be in it for you and not the billionaires? That's New Democrats. That's us. That's Lisa Roberts. And so I'm hearing that more and more. In St. John's in Newfoundland and Labrador, we've got Mary Shortle running there, who has shown people that she's a fighter for them, fighter for people. So the people in Atlantic, I think you deserve a lot better than folks that haven't had your back and haven't been your voice for you. You deserve a New Democrat. Vote for one.
No more questions. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
That concludes the press conference for today.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.
conclut la conférence de presse d'aujourd'hui. Merci beaucoup. Bonne journée.